Hi, so we're going to do 9.3 today. This is the graphing and writing equations of circles. I actually think that this is a pretty easy section. It doesn't get too complicated. We just kind of move pretty straightforward with what we're doing. We're dealing with mostly circles that are on the origin. In class, we may do a little bit more where we move the circles around a little bit, which I think is pretty easy. But let's just start with the basic stuff and see where we get. The vocabulary is, as you could probably guess, a circle is a set of all points x, y in a plane that are equidistant from a fixed point, that fixed point being the center. And then the radius is the distance r between the center and any point on the circle. So recall that a radius is the center to the edge of any part of the circle. The radius will always be the same. So if you look at the equation of a circle, the equation is derived with basically the distance formula, but here is what our equation ends up being. It's x squared plus y squared equals r squared. R is representative of the radius. So if the radius of a circle is 5, then this right here would be 25. If the radius of the circle is 3, then this right here will be 9. So real quickly, we can go right through this. It says identify the radius of each. X squared plus y squared equals 25. The radius is not 25. Remember, this portion is the radius squared. So therefore, it's the square root of whatever is over here. So in this case, it will be 5. And then here, right here, we have 75. Well, if we don't know what the square root is, then we're going to put it into a calculator and get a decimal, or we can reduce the radical. Either one will be right, and I will be okay with it. So here, it's the square root of 75. If you put that into a calculator, you get 8.66. Okay, so the radius of this circle right here would be 8.66. The radius of this circle right here would be 5. So that's pretty easy about identifying what the radius will be. Now understand, a circle has to be x squared plus y squared. It can't be anything else. It has to be x squared, y squared. Now, there are going to be times, like you'll see in this example right here, where we can get it to be x squared plus y squared. But if it's not, if one is like 2x squared and the other one's 1x or 1y squared, that is not a circle. That's something different. And that will be explained at a later time in a different section. Okay, so let's get through about how to graph an equation of a circle. So let's go through this example. What we have here is we have y squared equals negative x squared plus 16. Well, we can't graph. We have to make sure it's a circle first, which means it has to be in this form up here. So that's our first step, is to make sure that we have x squared plus y squared. So to do that, we're going to bring this x squared over to the other side. So it ends up as x squared plus y squared equals 16. Now we can identify the center and radius. From the equation, the graph is a circle centered at the origin. So anything that is x squared plus y squared will always be centered at the origin, always. Okay? Unless we change something about the x's and the y's, the origin will always be the center there. Anything that looks like x squared plus y squared is always centered at the origin. And then again, our radius is determined by that. It's the square root of that, so we have square root of 16, which is equal to 4. So our radius is 4. So that means that from the center, which means our origin is here, from the center, it will always be a distance of 4. So when we were plotting, the way that I do it is I go straight up, straight right, straight left, and straight down. And those points are going to be 0, 4, which is right here, 4, 0, which is right here, 0, negative 4, which is down here, and then 4, 0. So that's how I plot those points, and then we can draw our circle. Again, we're not all perfect. We'll just do the best that we can. That's definitely not a circle, but we get the idea. Okay, so that's how you draw a circle. On this one over here, real quickly, I want to go through this, and then I'll let you do this one below on your own. What we would do here is, because the 5s are common, we would want to factor that out first. So that's going to leave us with x squared plus y squared equals 80. And then before we do anything else, we will divide by 5. Now remember, you want to make sure, before we can identify what our radius is, we need to make sure that it's just x squared plus y squared on the left-hand side. There can't be anything multiplied by it on the outside. Okay, so we divide by 5 and we get x squared plus y squared equals 16. and which means this is going to be exactly the same as this. So I'm not going to go through and regraph this or anything like that. That's the basic idea. You get x squared plus y squared equals 16, so it's the same. Now we figure out our radius is 4, everything else is centered, is the same, so it's centered at the origin, etc. Okay? So I'm not going to go ahead and regraph that. What I want you guys to do is do this one on your own. Graph that real quick. Should not take you long. Really all you need to know is what your radius is. So hit play when you're ready. Okay, so here's what you should have. You should have the 9. We take the square root of 9 is 3. Therefore, our radius is 3. We are centered at the origin, so we just go up 3, right 3, down 3, left 3, and then we can draw our circle. I think that's pretty straightforward, so let's go ahead and move on. All right, so for the rest of this, we're talking about writing an equation of a circle. So basically what this means is that if we're given 2 points on a circle, if we're given a point on the edge and a point for the center, we can always figure out what the equation of the circle is. In these examples, our center is always going to be the origin. So you have to remember that origin means 0, 0. Okay, so what we're going to do then is, because the radius is based on the distance formula, that's all we really need to know. We know that our equation is going to be x squared plus y squared. What we don't know is what our r is going to be. And our r is derived by the distance formula, which is x minus x squared plus y minus y squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this negative 3, 4, and the 0, 0, because that's where the origin is, or that's where the origin, the center of the circle, okay? The center of the circle, the distance between this point and this point is going to give us the radius. Again, from the center to the edge will be the radius. So that's what we do. We do negative 3 minus 0 plus 4 minus 0. So negative 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. 9 plus 16 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5. So we're going to use the standard form with r equaling 5. So again, we plug it in. X squared plus y squared equals r squared. So that means we have 5 squared, which is just simply equal to 25. So there's our equation. So again, you take the 2 points, the one on the edge, the center, you find the distance between them, that will give you your r, and then we plug it in. Okay, so whatever this r is going to go right here and you're going to square it. Okay, whatever the r is going to go right here and you're going to square it. So try these two on your own and then hit play when you're ready. Same idea. All right, so both of these again have an origin as the center. So that means 0, 0 will be it for both of them. So again, we use the distance formula to find what the radius will be. In this first one, we ended up with 9 plus 49 is the square root of 58. So what you should have done was x squared plus y squared equals the square root of 58 squared. Well, if you recall, a square root and a squared will just cancel out. So this equation is simple. X squared plus y squared equals just 58, because the square root of 58 and the squared will cancel out. Over here, we ended up with the square root of 202. So we had x squared plus y squared equals square root of 202 squared. So the square root and the squared cancel out again. Our formula or equation is x squared plus y squared equals 202. So that should be pretty straightforward. That's, like I said, we may go through a couple of other things in class to make it, to tell you about the things that are a little bit more complicated about it, about moving the circle around from the origin. But this is the basics. This is what the formula for a circle is. Hope it makes sense. I will see you guys in class. Don't forget to take your quiz.